Maya Williams clutched her boarding pass tightly as she walked through the busy airport terminal. The 18-year-old college student had never flown first class before, but her mother had insisted on upgrading her ticket for the flight home during winter break. Maya's dark eyes sparkled with excitement as she approached Gate 12, where her flight to Chicago was preparing to board. The gate area buzzed with activity. Business travelers checked their phones while families gathered their luggage. Maya found an empty seat and pulled out her phone to text her roommate about the upgrade. She couldn't believe she would be sitting in one of those big leather seats she had only seen in movies. When the airline agent announced first-class boarding, Maya's heart raced. She grabbed her backpack and joined the short line of well-dressed passengers. Most of them wore expensive suits or designer clothes. Maya looked down at her simple jeans, sneakers, and college sweatshirt. She suddenly felt out of place. But she reminded herself that she belonged there just like everyone else. The flight attendant at the gate was a middle-aged woman with perfectly styled blonde hair and bright red lipstick. Her name tag read Patricia. When Maya handed over her boarding pass, Patricia looked at it for a long moment, then looked at Maya with suspicious eyes. "Is this your ticket?" Patricia asked, holding the boarding pass up to the light as if checking for counterfeit money. "Yes, ma'am," Maya replied politely. "My mother purchased it for me." Patricia's expression grew cold. "I need to see your identification." Maya quickly pulled out her driver's license. Patricia studied it carefully, comparing the photo to Maya's face multiple times. The passengers behind Maya began to shift impatiently in line. "There seems to be some kind of mistake," Patricia announced loudly. "This ticket doesn't match your information." Maya's stomach dropped. "I don't understand. My name is Maya Williams, just like it says on the ticket." Patricia waved over another airline employee, a tall man in a dark blue uniform with silver stripes on his sleeves. His name tag identified him as Captain Reynolds. "What's the problem here?" Captain Reynolds asked. "This young woman is trying to use someone else's first-class ticket," Patricia explained. "I don't think this ticket belongs to her." Maya felt her cheeks burn with embarrassment as other passengers stared at her. "This is my ticket," she said, her voice shaking slightly. "My mother bought it for me. I can call her right now to confirm." Captain Reynolds took the boarding pass and looked at it. "Miss Williams, are you sure you didn't accidentally pick up someone else's ticket? First-class seats are very expensive." The way he emphasized "very expensive" made Maya understand what he was really saying. He didn't think a young black woman like her could afford a first-class ticket. The realization hit her like a punch to the stomach. "I know how expensive they are," Maya said, trying to keep her voice steady. "My mother specifically bought this seat for me. She wanted me to be comfortable on my flight home." Patricia crossed her arms. "Do you have any proof that this ticket belongs to you? A receipt or confirmation email?" Maya fumbled with her phone, searching through her emails. The Wi-Fi in the airport was slow, and her hands were shaking. Behind her, she could hear passengers complaining about the delay. "Come on, let's move this line along," someone muttered. "Some people need to learn their place," another voice whispered. Each comment felt like a knife. Maya had experienced racism before, but never so publicly, never with so many people watching her humiliation. She finally found the email confirmation her mother had forwarded to her. "Here," Maya said, showing her phone screen to Patricia. "This is the confirmation email from my mother." Patricia barely glanced at the phone. "Anyone can fake an email. I'm going to need to verify this with our customer service department. You'll need to step aside while I make some calls." "But the plane is about to board," Maya protested. "Can't we sort this out on the plane?" "I'm not letting you board until we verify that ticket is legitimate," Patricia said firmly. "Security protocols exist for a reason." Captain Reynolds nodded in agreement. "We need to follow proper procedures. Miss Williams, please step over to the service desk." Maya felt tears threatening to spill over, but she refused to cry in front of all these people. She moved to the side while Patricia called someone on her phone. Other first-class passengers continued boarding, many of them shooting curious or annoyed glances in Maya's direction. A young man about her age walked past with his boarding pass. He was wearing ripped jeans and a wrinkled t-shirt, looking far more casual than Maya. Patricia smiled warmly at him and wished him a pleasant flight without asking for any additional identification. The unfairness of the situation became crystal clear. Maya watched as Patricia questioned nothing about the casually dressed white passenger, while scrutinizing every detail of her legitimate ticket. It wasn't about dress codes or suspicious behavior. It was about the color of her skin. 20 minutes passed. Maya stood by the service desk, watching as the rest of first class boarded, then business class, then economy. Her seat was empty, waiting for her, but she wasn't allowed to take it. Patricia finally hung up her phone and walked over with Captain Reynolds. Their expressions were serious and Maya's heart sank. "Miss Williams," Patricia began, "customer service couldn't immediately verify your ticket purchase. For security reasons, we're going to have to ask you to take a different flight." "But I have a confirmed reservation," Maya said desperately. "The email shows my seat assignment and everything." Captain Reynolds shook his head. "We understand your frustration, but we have protocols to follow. We can arrange for you to take the next flight in economy class." "Economy class?" Maya's voice cracked. "But my seat is in first class. My mother paid for first class. The next economy seat we have available is on tomorrow's morning flight," Patricia added. "We can provide you with a hotel voucher for tonight." Maya couldn't believe what was happening. They were essentially forcing her to spend an extra night in a strange city because they refused to honor her legitimate ticket. All because they couldn't believe a black college student belonged in first class. "This isn't right," Maya said, her voice growing stronger. "You're discriminating against me. I have every right to be on this flight, in the seat my mother purchased." Patricia's expression hardened. "Miss Williams, I'm going to have to ask you to lower your voice. You're causing a disturbance." "I'm causing a disturbance?" Maya looked around at the other passengers who were now openly staring. "I'm the one being treated unfairly here." Captain Reynolds stepped forward. "Miss Williams, if you continue to be disruptive, we'll have to call airport security." The threat hung in the air like a dark cloud. Maya realized that no matter how right she was, no matter how unfairly she was being treated, she was in a losing situation. Two airline employees, both white, both in positions of authority, were prepared to have her arrested rather than admit their mistake. Maya took a deep breath and pulled out her phone. Her mother had taught her to always call when she felt unsafe or was being treated unfairly. With shaking fingers, she dialed her mother's number. "Mom," Maya said when the call connected. "I need your help." "They won't let me board my flight?" She explained the situation while Patricia and Captain Reynolds watched impatiently. Her mother's voice was calm, but Maya could hear the controlled anger underneath. "Put them on the phone, sweetheart," her mother said. "Let me speak with whoever is in charge." Maya held out her phone to Captain Reynolds. "My mother would like to speak with you." Captain Reynolds reluctantly took the phone. "Hello, this is Captain Reynolds. Your daughter is having some issues with ticket verification." "Yes, I understand you purchased the ticket." "Well, our protocols require—" "What? Could you repeat that?" Maya watched as Captain Reynolds' expression changed from impatient to confused to something approaching concern. His face grew pale as he listened to whatever her mother was saying. "I see," he said slowly. "Yes, ma'am." "Of course." "Right away." He handed the phone back to Maya with a strange look on his face. "Your mother wants to speak with you." "Maya, honey," her mother's voice was steady but firm. "I want you to stay exactly where you are. Don't go anywhere. Don't let them pressure you into leaving. I'm going to make a few phone calls, and then I'll be there myself." "But Mom, your flight isn't until tomorrow." "You don't need to—" "Yes, I do need to," her mother interrupted gently. "This isn't just about your ticket anymore. They need to learn that they can't treat people this way. Just wait for me, okay? I'll be there within the hour." Maya hung up feeling confused but slightly relieved. She wasn't sure how her mother planned to get there so quickly. But something in her voice suggested she had a plan. Patricia and Captain Reynolds were whispering to each other. Occasionally, glancing at Maya, Captain Reynolds looked nervous, constantly checking his phone. Patricia seemed less confident than before, but she maintained her rigid posture. "Your mother is coming here?" Patricia asked. "She said she'd be here within the hour," Maya replied. Captain Reynolds checked his watch. "Look, Miss Williams, maybe we can work something out. We might have made an error in our procedures." But Maya shook her head. "No, I'll wait for my mother." She said she wanted to handle this herself. The boarding gate had grown quiet. The flight Maya was supposed to be on had already departed. Other pass. Maya glanced at her phone for the 10th time in 5 minutes. Her mother should arrive any moment. The waiting area had grown tense, with Patricia and Captain Reynolds making increasingly frantic phone calls. Other airline employees had started gathering near the gate, speaking in hushed voices and stealing glances at Maya. Suddenly, the automatic doors near the security checkpoint slid open, and Maya's breath caught in her throat. A woman in an elegant navy blue business suit walked through, her heels clicking confidently against the polished floor. Her dark hair was pulled back in a professional bun, and she carried herself with the kind of authority that made people automatically step aside. Maya barely recognized her own mother at home. Dr. Angela Williams was just Mom, the woman who made pancakes on Sunday mornings and helped with homework. But this woman, striding through the airport terminal, looked like she could run a corporation. Maya suddenly realized she had never really seen her mother in her professional element. Angela's eyes found Maya immediately, and her expression softened for just a moment. She walked over and pulled her daughter into a warm hug. "Are you okay, sweetheart?" Angela asked quietly. "I'm fine, Mom, but I still don't understand what happened. They wouldn't let me board even though I had a valid ticket." Angela's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "We're going to get this sorted out right now." She turned to face Patricia and Captain Reynolds, who had both stopped their phone conversations and were staring at her, with expressions that had moved beyond nervous to something approaching panic. "Good evening," Angela said, her voice polite but ice-cold. "I'm Dr. Angela Williams. I believe you've been having some issues with my daughter's ticket." Patricia stammered, "Dr. Williams, yes, we've been trying to resolve the situation. There was some confusion about ticket verification." "Confusion?" Angela's eyebrows rose slightly. "Let me see if I understand correctly. You prevented my daughter from boarding a flight for which she had a confirmed, paid reservation. You questioned the legitimacy of her ticket without cause. And you threatened to call security when she rightfully objected to this treatment." Captain Reynolds stepped forward, trying to regain some control. "Ma'am, we follow strict security protocols. When there are questions about ticket authenticity, what specifically made you question my daughter's ticket?" Angela interrupted smoothly. Captain Reynolds and Patricia exchanged glances. "Well, the system showed some irregularities." "What irregularities?" Angela's voice remained calm, but Maya could sense the steel underneath. "I'd like to see documentation of these supposed system irregularities." "I will, Patricia fumbled with her tablet. "The irregularities were done clear. I see." Angela pulled out her own phone and began typing. "So you have no documentation of any actual irregularities. You simply decided, based on your visual assessment of my 18-year-old daughter, that she couldn't possibly belong in first class. That's not double quote," Captain Reynolds began. "What's not what?" Angela's gaze was sharp enough to cut glass. "Not discrimination? Not racial profiling? Because from where I'm standing, that's exactly what this looks like." Maya watched in amazement as her mother systematically dismantled their excuses. She had never heard her mother speak with such controlled authority before. "Dr. Williams," Patricia said desperately, "perhaps we can discuss this privately. "No," Angela said firmly. "My daughter was humiliated publicly. If you want to discuss this, we'll do it right here where everyone can hear." A small crowd had indeed gathered. Other travelers, airline employees, and airport staff were watching the confrontation with interest. Maya noticed that several people were recording with their phones. Angela continued, "I'd like to know your company's policy on ticket verification. Specifically, Under what circumstances do you require additional identification beyond a valid boarding pass and government-issued ID? Captain Reynolds looked uncomfortable. We require additional verification when there are suspicious circumstances. Define suspicious circumstances. When tickets may not belong to the passenger presenting them. And what made you believe my daughter's ticket didn't belong to her? The silence stretched on. Everyone within earshot was listening. Patricia and Captain Reynolds clearly couldn't admit their real reasons without exposing themselves to discrimination charges. Your daughter appeared young for first class, Patricia finally offered weakly. Young? Angela's voice rose slightly. Are there age restrictions on first-class seating I'm not aware of? No, ma'am, there are not, Captain Reynolds admitted. So you discriminated against my daughter based on her age and appearance. Would you like to clarify what about her appearance suggested she didn't belong in first class? Again, silence. Maya felt a surge of pride, watching her mother back them into a corner with their own prejudices. Angela pulled out her phone again and dialed a number. Hello, Charles. It's Angela Williams. Yes, I'm at the airport right now dealing with a situation involving my daughter. No, I'm not flying commercially tonight. I'll be taking the company jet home after I finish here. Maya's eyes widened. Company jet? What company did her mother work for? Angela continued her phone conversation. Actually, Charles, I think you might want to review our contracts with Pinnacle Airlines. Apparently their staff aren't properly trained on discrimination policies. Yes, I think a full review would be appropriate. When she hung up, both Captain Reynolds and Patricia looked like they might be sick. Dr. Williams, Captain Reynolds said carefully, perhaps we should involve our district manager in this conversation. Oh. I think we're well beyond district managers at this point, Angela replied smoothly. Another airline employee hurried over. A woman in a more expensive suit with multiple pins on her lapel. Her badge identified her as Sarah Chang, Regional Operations Manager. Dr. Williams, Sarah said breathlessly, I just received a call from our corporate office. I understand there's been a serious misunderstanding. A misunderstanding? Angela's tone could have frozen water. Miss Chun, your employees racially profiled my daughter and prevented her from boarding a flight she was legally entitled to take. They questioned her right to be in first class based purely on their assumptions about what a young black woman should look like. Sarah's face went pale. Dr. Williams, I assure you this does not represent our company values. Really? Because your employees seemed very confident in their authority to remove paying customers from flights based on racial assumptions? Maya suddenly realized that everyone was treating her mother like she was incredibly important. Airport managers didn't usually show up for regular passenger complaints. And what was this about corporate offices calling? Mom, Maya whispered, who do you work for? Angela looked at her daughter with a slight smile. Sweetheart, I work for Williams Corporate Holdings. We own several companies, including some that do significant business with airlines. The revelation hit Maya like a thunderbolt. Her mother wasn't just a businesswoman, she was a CEO, the Williams Corporate Holdings that sponsored her college scholarship program, that had buildings named after them around the city. That was always mentioned in the business news her father watched. Her mother was that. Williams. Sarah Chun's face had gone from pale to gray. Williams Corporate Holdings was one of the largest corporate travel accounts in the region. They managed travel for dozens of subsidiary companies, representing millions of dollars in airline business annually. Dr. Williams, Sarah said desperately, please let us make this right. We can offer your daughter compensation. Double quotes, compensation. Angela's voice was dangerous quiet. You think this is about money? My daughter was humiliated, discriminated against, and threatened with arrest for the crime of being black in first class. You think a travel voucher fixes that? What can we do to resolve this situation? Sarah asked. Angela looked around the gathered crowd, then back at Sarah. First, I want a public apology to my daughter. Second, I want a written explanation of exactly what policies were supposedly violated that justified this treatment. Third, I want your company's entire discrimination training program reviewed by an outside consultant. And fourth, I want the employees responsible for this incident to undergo mandatory bias training. And if we agree to these terms? Sarah asked hopefully. Then we'll consider whether Williams Corporate Holdings continues to do business with your airline. We'll also consider whether this incident needs to be reported to the Department of Transportation Civil Rights Office. Maya watched the color drain completely out of Sarah Chun's face. The threat was clear: comply with the demands or lose millions in corporate contracts and face federal investigation. Patricia finally spoke up, her voice shaking slightly. Miss Williams, I want to personally apologize for any misunderstanding. I may have been overly cautious in following our security procedures. Overly cautious? Maya found her voice. You told me I was using someone else's ticket. You said anyone could fake an email. You threatened to have me arrested. That wasn't caution. That was racism. I didn't mean ... Patricia's professional facade crumbled. Yes, you did mean it, Maya continued, feeling her mother's strength flowing into her. You took one look at me and decided I didn't belong in first class. You never would have treated a white passenger that way. Captain Reynolds stepped forward. Miss Williams. The corporate jet was unlike anything Maya had ever experienced. Soft leather seats that reclined into full beds, personal entertainment systems, and a flight attendant who treated her like royalty. As they flew home through the night sky, Maya stared out the window at the city lights below, still processing everything that had happened. Penny, for your thoughts? Her mother asked, settling into the seat across from her. Maya turned from the window. I keep thinking about that flight attendant, Patricia. Did you see her face when she realized who you were? Angela nodded thoughtfully. Fear can be a powerful teacher, but it's not the only way people learn. What matters more is whether she understands why what she did was wrong. Do you think she does? I hope so. But understanding and changing behavior are two different things. Maya curled up in her seat. Mom, can I ask you something? Why didn't you ever tell me about your company? I mean, really tell me. I knew you worked in business, but I had no idea you were so ... powerful. Angela smiled gently. Your father and I decided early on that we wanted you to grow up as normally as possible. We wanted you to succeed because of your own efforts, not because people were trying to impress your parents. But didn't that put me at a disadvantage? I mean, if I had known about your connections... Sweetheart, what happened tonight proved exactly why we made that choice. You stood up for yourself with courage and dignity. You didn't back down or accept unfair treatment. That strength came from inside you, not from knowing about corporate contracts or business deals. Maya considered this. I suppose if I had started the conversation by name-dropping Williams Corporate Holdings... people would have treated you differently, but they wouldn't have learned anything. They would have been polite to avoid business consequences, not because they understood their behavior was wrong. The flight attendant brought them warm cookies and hot chocolate. Maya noticed how naturally respectful the woman was, how she treated both passengers equally without question. The contrast with her earlier experience was stark. 3 weeks later, Maya was back at college when her phone buzzed with a news alert. The headline made her gasp. Major airline implements sweeping anti-discrimination training after viral incident. She quickly called her mother. Mom, did you see the news about Pinnacle Airlines? I did, Angela replied. Apparently someone recorded most of what happened that night and posted it online. The video went viral over the weekend. Maya sat down heavily. People saw everything? Everything. Your dignity, your courage, the way you handled yourself under pressure. The comments are overwhelmingly supportive of you. What about Patricia and Captain Reynolds? Patricia has been placed on administrative leave pending completion of comprehensive bias training. Captain Reynolds has been reassigned to training duties, where he'll help develop new discrimination awareness programs. Maya felt a complex mix of emotions. She was glad there were consequences, but she didn't take pleasure in anyone losing their job. There's more, Angela continued. 5 other airlines have reached out to Williams Corporate Holdings asking to review their own policies. They want to make sure they don't face similar situations. Really? Change is happening, sweetheart. Maybe not as fast as we'd like, but it's happening. A month later, Maya received an unexpected email from Sarah Chun, the regional operations manager from Pinnacle Airlines. Dear Miss Williams, the email read, I wanted to update you on the changes we've implemented following the incident at our airport. We have completely overhauled our customer service training program with input from civil rights organizations. We've also established a passenger advocacy hotline and hired a director of diversity and inclusion. Most importantly, we've created the Maya Williams Scholarship Program, which will provide travel assistance for students from underrepresented communities. We hope this helps ensure that young people like yourself can travel with dignity and respect. Would you be willing to participate in our new employee training program as a speaker? Your perspective would be invaluable. Maya showed the email to her roommate, Jessica. Wow, Jessica said. They named a scholarship after you. That's incredible. I don't know if I should accept their invitation to speak, Maya admitted. Part of me is still angry about what happened. Maybe that anger is exactly why you should do it, Jessica suggested. You could help prevent other people from going through what you experienced. That evening, Maya called her mother to discuss the opportunity. What do you think? Maya asked. Should I work with them? That's entirely your decision, sweetheart. But let me ask you this, if speaking to their employees could prevent even one person from being discriminated against, would it be worth doing? Maya thought about other young black women trying to travel, other college students who might face the same assumptions and prejudices she had encountered. You're right, she said. I should do it. 2 months later, Maya stood in front of a room full of Pinnacle Airlines employees at their training headquarters. Patricia was in the front row, along with several other flight attendants and gate agents. Captain Reynolds sat in the back, taking notes. 3 months ago, Maya began, I was just a college student trying to get home for winter break. I had a legitimate first-class ticket that my mother had purchased for me. But when I tried to board my flight, I was treated like a criminal. The room was completely silent. The employees who questioned my ticket weren't intentionally cruel people. They were making assumptions based on unconscious bias. They saw a young black woman with a first-class ticket and decided something didn't add up. Maya could see some uncomfortable shifting in the audience, but people were listening intently. I want you to understand something important. I'm not here to shame anyone or make you feel guilty. I'm here because discrimination hurts everyone, the victims, the witnesses, and even the people who perpetrate it. She gestured toward Patricia. Patricia, would you like to share what you learned from our experience? Patricia stood up, her hands shaking slightly. Miss Williams, I want to thank you for being here today. What I learned is that my assumptions about who belongs in first class were based on stereotypes I didn't even realize I had. I looked at you and made judgments about your economic status based on your age and race. I was wrong and I'm sorry. Thank you for saying that, Maya replied. But here's what I want everyone in this room to understand. It's not enough to be sorry. You have to actively work against your unconscious biases. She clicked to her next slide. Studies show that black passengers are more likely to be questioned about their tickets, more likely to be asked for additional identification, and more likely to be removed from flights. This isn't usually because of intentional racism, it's because of unconscious assumptions. A young gate agent raised her hand. How do we recognize when we're making these assumptions? Great question. First, you need to examine your internal reactions. When you see someone who doesn't match your mental image of a first-class passenger, ask yourself why. Is it based on their behavior or their appearance? Second, apply the same standards to everyone. If you're going to question one person's ticket, you should be prepared to question anyone's ticket under the same circumstances. Maya spent the next hour discussing specific scenarios, role-playing exercises, and policy changes that could prevent discrimination. She was impressed by how engaged the audience was. How many thoughtful questions they asked? After the formal presentation, Patricia approached her privately. Miss Williams, I wanted you to know that what happened that night changed me. I've been thinking about all the assumptions I make about passengers every day. I've caught myself several times, and I've tried to do better. I appreciate that, Maya said. Real change is hard work, but it's worth it. I also wanted to tell you that my daughter is 16. When I went home that night and told her what happened, she was ashamed of me. She said I was exactly the kind of adult she hoped never to become. That hurt more than anything else. Maya felt a pang of sympathy. What did you tell her? I told her she was right to be disappointed. But I also promised her that I would learn from my mistakes and do better. I've been volunteering with a local diversity organization, trying to understand my own biases better. That's really commendable, Maya said sincerely. 6 months after the incident, Maya received another surprise. She was invited to speak at a conference on corporate responsibility in the travel industry. The audience included executives from major airlines, hotel chains, and travel companies. Standing at the podium, looking out at hundreds of business leaders, Maya felt a surge of confidence. The shy 18-year-old who had been afraid to cause a scene at the airport had grown into a young woman who could command a room. Ladies and gentlemen, she began, I'm here today because of a single moment when someone decided I didn't belong somewhere. But I'm also here because my mother taught me that dignity isn't negotiable and that standing up for what's right sometimes requires making people uncomfortable. She told her story to the rapt audience, but this time she focused on the business case for fighting discrimination. When companies allow bias to affect customer service, they don't just hurt individuals, they damage their own reputation and bottom line. In our social media age, discrimination incidents can go viral in hours. The